My daughter mocked me as a useless old man scheming to sell my house for millions while hiding her child from me. But I didn't say a word. Something inside me shattered, and I flipped the script with a secret deal and a bombshell that exposed her husband's dark crimes. Hit that like button and subscribe to see how I turned their betrayal into my triumph. It all started with a phone call I wasn't meant to hear. I always thought that building a life meant putting down roots brick by brick and watching it grow into something solid. I'm Henry Thompson, a retired engineer from Denver pushing 70 now. For the last couple of years, it's just been me rattling around in this old house my wife Margaret and I put together back in '99. Every nail in these walls has a story. Late nights with my hands calloused from the job site, Margaret bringing me coffee while I measured and cut. We didn't have much back then, but we had dreams. And that house, it was our dream for the family we were starting. You know, I never regretted the sacrifices. Take my daughter Sophia. She was the light of our lives from the day she was born. I worked double shifts for years to cover her college tuition at the University of Colorado. 48 grand over 4 years. But what was money compared to seeing her walk across that stage? I'd come home bone-tired, concrete dust in my hair, and Margaret would rub my shoulders while I balanced the checkbook. "Henry, you're giving her the world," she'd say. And the wedding. Oh man, that was another stretch. Sophia wanted the whole fairy tale dress venue, the works. We could have done it cheap, maybe 5 grand tops, but she teared up and said, "Dad, this is my dream." So I took on weekend gigs installing floors for a buddy under the table. 32,000 in the end, but hearing her whisper, "You're the best dad ever," during our dance, worth every ache. Even when Marcus came into the picture, my son-in-law, the financial whiz, I bent over backward. He lost his job a couple years back. Something shady he never fully explained, and they moved in with me for what was supposed to be temporary. I didn't charge rent, covered the extra groceries, even footed the bill for his BMW transmission when it blew 3 grand that wiped out my emergency fund. "Henry, you're like a father to me," he'd say, slapping my back at barbecues. I believed it. Thought I was building something lasting, you know, family sticking together through thick and thin. But then everything changed in a heartbeat. It was a quiet evening, just me scraping the last of some reheated meatloaf, Margaret's recipe, though mine never quite hit the mark without her touch. The phone rang, and I saw Sophia's name on the caller ID. My chest warmed up like it always did. "Hey, Dad, how are you holding up?" Her voice was that familiar mix of concern and rush, the kind that made me feel like I still mattered. We chatted a bit, me assuring her I was fine, her talking about their business trip to Phoenix. I mentioned a little slip-up the day before, forgetting to turn off the burner under my coffee pot. Good thing I smelled it in time. There was a pause, and I could picture her frowning that crease between her brows just like her mother's. "Dad, maybe it's time we talked about getting you some help," she said. But I brushed it off. "I'm good, sweetheart. How's the conference?" She laughed it off too, but it sounded forced. "Love you, Dad. Take care." Click. I reached to hang up, but then I heard rustling, must have dropped the phone in her purse without ending the call. Voices came through, muffled but clear. "See, he's deteriorating," Sophia said, her tone shifting from sweet to sharp. "Forgot the stove again. What if he burns the place down?" Marcus chimed in, cold as ice. "It's time for a nursing home, Soph. He's a burden now, and you know it. That house is worth almost $1 million in this market. Sell it, get him somewhere decent but cheap, and we can finally grab that Boulder spot with the views." My hand froze on the receiver. A burden. Me. The man who'd given them everything. Sophia actually laughed. "God, Marcus, he was so grateful just to hear from me tonight. Has no clue we're planning this. The sooner the better before he gets too confused to trust us." The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. Something inside me broke like a beam snapping under too much weight. I sat there in Margaret's old recliner, staring at her photo on the mantel. Her eyes seemed to say, "I told you so." She'd warned me years ago about Sophia's streak of entitlement. "Don't give her so much she forgets gratitude," she'd said. But I hadn't listened. I'd thought love meant giving it all. What I didn't expect was how that pain turned into clarity. My chest ached, a mix of anger and sorrow churning like a storm, but underneath it a quiet resolve started building. I wasn't some confused old fool ready to be packed away. No, I was the engineer who'd built this life from nothing, and if they thought they could sell my memories for their mountain view, they were in for a shock. I stood up slowly, legs steady despite the hurt, and walked to the kitchen drawer where I kept old papers. My fingers found Margaret's journal without looking, a leather-bound thing she'd kept until the cancer took her strength. I'd never read it fully, felt too raw. But tonight I needed answers. What secrets had she seen in our daughter that I missed? As I flipped the cover, a chill ran down my spine. The first entry jumped out. Henry works himself to the bone for Sophia, but I see the resentment in her eyes sometimes, like when she took money from his wallet as a kid and lied about it. God, I hope she grows out of it. My breath caught. What else was in here? And how deep did this betrayal go? I closed the journal for a moment, steadying myself. I always thought family was unbreakable. But if they were willing to discard me like yesterday's trash, maybe it was time I showed them just how strong these old bones could be. Selling the house. Oh, I'd beat them to it, and they'd never see it coming. The kitchen light was still off the shadows, stretching long across the floor, like fingers reaching for what was left of my peace. I sat there in Margaret's recliner, her diary open in my lap, the leather cool against my skin. I always thought grief was something you buried once after losing her to cancer 2 years back. But what I didn't expect was how tonight's betrayal dug it all up again, mixing it with a fresh hurt that made my bones ache. Sophia's words, her laugh, kept replaying, not like thunder, but like a slow drip wearing away at the foundation I'd built my life on. I flipped past the early pages, my eyes scanning Margaret's handwriting, steady and sure as she always was. She'd chronicled it all, the sacrifices I'd made without a second thought. Henry's killing himself for Sophia's tuition, one entry read. Nights at the site sleeping in his truck to save $1 just so she can go to that fancy school. He says it's for her future, but I see the toll it takes. I paused, my throat tightening. Those were the days I'd come home with blisters and back pain, but I'd grin through it, telling Margaret, "Our girl's smart, she deserves better than we had." And the wedding, Margaret hadn't forgotten that either. Henry took on extra gigs for Sophia's big day, even when we could barely afford it. 32 grand, and he never complained. But I worry she doesn't see the love behind it, just the stuff. But then the tone darkened, and my pulse skipped. Sophia's got resentment brewing, Margaret wrote, jealous of the time Henry and I spend together, like when we'd read by the window. She'd pout, saying, "Dad's always with you." And that time she swiped money from his wallet as a teen, lied straight-faced. I fear it's a sign she thinks we owe her the world without giving back. I leaned back, the recliner creaking under me, jealous of Margaret and me. Our bond had been the rock everything else stood on, but to Sophia, it was competition. The realization stung, a quiet, bitter taste settled in my gut. All those years I'd thought her demands were just a kid being a kid. But Margaret had seen the selfishness, the entitlement growing like weeds in a garden I'd tended so carefully. The loneliness hit harder then, like a wave in the dark room. At my age, you figure you've earned a little warmth from the ones you raised, maybe a visit, a real talk, not this calculated shove into some facility. I sat there alone in the pitch-black living room, feeling age like a shadow, swallowing the sacrifices of a lifetime. My hands, weathered from decades of building, curled into fists without me thinking. But it wasn't rage boiling over. It was a deep, weary disappointment, the kind that makes you question if all that giving was worth it. Sophia and Marcus weren't just ungrateful, they were cold, plotting my end like I was an expired asset. Their motive, pure greed wrapped in fake concern. Sophia, with her resentment from childhood, saw me as an obstacle to her dream life. Marcus, he was the enabler, turning her whispers into plans. What I didn't expect was the next entry dated right after Marcus entered the picture. Marcus worries me more than ever, Margaret had scribbled. Sophia's blind to it, but I heard he swindled an older client out of savings before they tied the knot. Lost his job over something shady, and Henry doesn't know the half of it. My pulse raced, a flicker of something sharper than pain cutting through the fog. Swindled. That explained the vague excuses about his career change, the way he'd pat my back and call me family while living off my dime. I set the diary down for a second, my mind spinning. If Margaret was right, and she usually was, what else had he pulled? Was his whole marriage to Sophia built on schemes? I couldn't just sit with this. The hurt was still raw, but it was shifting, turning into fuel. I wasn't going to crumble like some forgotten blueprint. No. I'd use what I knew best. Planning step by step, like engineering a structure that wouldn't fall. I grabbed my phone again, fingers steadier now, and searched Marcus's name online, the screen's glow harsh in the dim room. A quick hit, an old article about his firm firing advisors for questionable transactions. No names, but the dates matched. My breath caught proof he wasn't just lazy, he was crooked. The pieces fit, and with them came a quiet power. I wasn't the fool they thought. That's when I dialed Evelyn, Margaret's old teaching buddy, the one who'd always had a no-nonsense way about her. Evelyn, I said, keeping my voice even though the bitterness lingered. It's Henry. I just overheard Sophia and Marcus plotting to sell my house and stick me in a home. And Margaret's diary. It's got me thinking they've been this way for years. She sighed, not surprised. Henry, I knew it had come to this. Marcus did me dirty once, bad investment advice that cost me savings. You ready to push back? Push back. The words settled like a foundation stone. I wasn't yelling or raging. That wasn't me. But inside, a plan was forming, deep and deliberate. Yeah. I told her, pulling out a notepad to jot notes. Lawyer, real estate agent, timeline. My hand moved like it did on job sites, sketching solutions. Let's start with a lawyer who knows his stuff. I'm not letting them take it all like Margaret warned. Evelyn chuckled softly. Good. I'll text you a name. And Henry. Stay sharp. They don't know what they're up against. I hung up the notepad, filling with steps. Check finances, hide assets, sell before they do. The engineer in me was waking up, turning pain into precision. Sophia and Marcus thought I was done, a relic to discard. But they'd learn the hard way that this old man had more fight left than they ever imagined. And with Margaret's words guiding me, I'd make sure their greed cost them everything. But what was that article really hinting at? And how deep did Marcus's lies go? I'd find out soon enough. Tomorrow, the real work began. The morning after that phone call felt like a fog lifting, slow and hazy, but with a clarity sharpening at the edges. I sat at the kitchen table, Margaret's diary closed beside my coffee mug, her warnings still simmering in my mind. I always thought betrayal was something you saw coming from afar, like a storm on the horizon. But what I didn't expect was how it snuck up, turning your own blood against you. Sophia's resentment, Marcus's secrets, they weren't new, just hidden under layers of my trust. And now, with Evelyn's promise to help ringing in my ears from last night's call, I wasn't about to let that fog swallow me whole. I headed to Brews and Views, the little spot down the block where the coffee's strong and the crowd's a mix of folks like me, retirees nursing their mugs, chatting about grandkids or the weather. Evelyn was waiting at a corner table, her face lined with that no-nonsense look she'd had since Margaret's teaching days. Henry, she said, pushing a black coffee my way, sit down before you wear a hole in the floor. You holding up? I took the seat, the steam from the cup rising like my thoughts. I laid it out for her, the overheard plan, Sophia calling me a burden, Marcus eyeing my house like a cash cow. Evelyn listened, her expression hardening when I mentioned him. That snake, she muttered, shaking her head. Remember how he'd grin at your barbecues, slapping your back like you were best pals? Well, he wasn't grinning when he talked me into that lousy investment a few years back. Said it was rock solid, but I lost 10 grand overnight. Never got a dime back, and he acted like it was just bad luck. Her voice had an edge, the kind that comes from old wounds reopening. I felt a twist in my gut. Marcus hadn't just played me. He'd made a habit of it, preying on folks who trusted too easily. His motive was crystal clear now. A smooth talker hiding his failures behind other people's money, dragging Sophia down with him because she was too blinded by her own grudges to see it. Sitting there, sipping that bitter brew, I felt a crack in the loneliness that had settled over me like dust on unused tools. Evelyn's support was a reminder that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the friends who stick when the blood turns cold. But the pain sharpened too, thinking how Marcus had taken my 50 grand loan, meant to help them through his rough patch, and blown it on who knows what. Fancy trips, Sophia's shopping sprees. It wasn't just money. It was my sweat. My skipped vacations poured into them like concrete into a foundation. And for what? So they could laugh about warehousing me. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. There's more to Marcus than bad investments, Henry. Word is he got canned for messing with client funds, maybe even embezzlement. No charges stuck, but folks in his circle talk. I can poke around if you want. Embezzlement. The word hung there like a loose wire, sparking questions. Was that why he was so desperate for my house money to cover his tracks? My mind raced back to Margaret's diary, her vague worry about him swindling someone. If Evelyn was right, this wasn't just greed, it was criminal, and Sophia was in on it, choosing his schemes over her own father. I couldn't sit on that. Back home, I hauled out the old safe from the closet, the one Margaret and I stashed our important papers in. My knees creaked a bit as I knelt down, age, reminding me I wasn't as spry as I used to be. But I pushed through, pulling out stacks of bank statements and loan docs. I slipped on my reading glasses, the ones with the magnifying lens like I used for checking blueprints back in the day, and started sifting. Page by page, the numbers told a story I'd ignored too long. There it was, the loan agreement from 2 years ago, 50 grand to Marcus for his fresh start. No repayments since month 3. I ran my finger down the columns, calculating in my head like I did on job sites. Interest accrued, nothing credited. He'd taken it all, probably funneled it into their cushy life, while I scrimped on my own groceries. The discovery hit like a quiet thunderclap, not loud rage, but a deep, simmering resolve. Part of me wanted to call Sophia right then, demand answers, but the smarter part, the engineer who'd learned to measure twice, cut once, knew better. This was ammunition proof their betrayal ran deeper than words. I wasn't crumbling. I was analyzing, building a case brick by brick. That's when I dialed up Tom, the private investigator I'd looked up online after Evelyn's tip. Tom here, he answered, gruff and to the point. I need a background on Marcus Reed, I said, keeping my tone even. Job history, debts, any legal whispers. Discreet and quick. He quoted a fair price, no haggling, and said he'd have something in a day or two. Hanging up, I felt a shift like a foundation settling solid. I'd spent my career fixing what others broke. Now I'd fix this mess they'd made of my trust. With that in place, the plan took shape. I'd play along, let them think I was the clueless dad ready to fade away. I picked up the phone one more time, dialing Sophia. Hey, kiddo, I said, forcing warmth into my voice, the kind I used when she was little and scraped her knee. Been thinking about that resort place you mentioned, the one with the staff on hand? Might not be a bad idea after all. Her response was instant, all sugar and relief. Dad, that's great. We'll sort it when we're back. You deserve the rest. I could picture Marcus nodding in the background, smug as ever. They thought they'd won, baiting me with their concern while plotting their windfall. But they didn't know I was the one setting the hook. Evelyn texted me that afternoon with James Whitaker's contact, the lawyer she swore by. He'll lock down your assets tight, she wrote. I added it to my notepad right under PI on Marcus and fake agreement to buy time. The pieces were falling into place, and for the first time I felt the balance tipping my way. Sophia and Marcus had counted on me being weak, too old to fight back. But I'd show them otherwise quiet and calculated, like reinforcing a beam before the storm hits. Still, what would Tom uncover, and just how dirty were Marcus's hands? I'd find out soon, and when I did, their house of cards would come tumbling down. Evaluation as a professional writer. As a professional writer with experience in narrative fiction, memoirs, and inspirational stories, including works published in literary magazines and novels, centered on family dynamics and personal resilience, I evaluate Part 3 based on standard literary criteria: structure, character development, pacing, emotional authenticity, and overall impact. My assessment is objective. Drawing from principles like Chekhov's gun, every detail serves a purpose, and show don't tell, reveal emotions through actions. I compare it to the original story's equivalent sections. Roy's initial planning and discoveries focusing on improvements in depth and engagement. The sun was barely up, but I was already at the kitchen table, my notepad open, coffee gone cold. Margaret's diary sat nearby, its warnings like a blueprint I couldn't ignore anymore. I always thought love meant giving everything, no questions asked, but what I didn't expect was how that love could be twisted into a weapon against me. Sophia and Marcus weren't just after my house, they were betting on me being too old, too soft to see through their game. But last night, with Evelyn's words and those damning loan papers still fresh, I knew I wasn't the one who'd be played. Not anymore. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over Sophia's name. Part of me still saw that little girl who'd hug me tight at 10, giggling, "Dad, you're my hero," after I'd fixed her broken bike. But now her voice from that overheard call, laughing, calling me a burden, cut through those memories like a saw through soft wood. I took a breath, steadying myself, and dialed. "Hey, kiddo," I said, forcing warmth into my tone, the kind I used when she'd cry over a scraped knee. "I've been thinking about that place you mentioned, the one with the medical staff. Sounds like it could be good for me." Her response was instant, all sugar and fake relief. "Oh, Dad, I'm so glad you're coming around. It's perfect for you. Safe, comfortable. We'll handle everything when we're back from Phoenix." I could hear the grin in her voice, the smugness of thinking she'd won. Marcus's low chuckle in the background sealed it. They thought I was their mark, ready to sign away my life for their Boulder dream house. Hearing Sophia laugh like that, so carefree while plotting to sell my world out from under me, I had to clench my jaw to keep from breaking. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the cold, calculated way she played the loving daughter, knowing she'd never have to mean it. Her motive wasn't just greed. It was entitlement, built up from years of getting everything she wanted without a thought for what it cost me. And Marcus. He was the puppet master, turning her resentment into a plan to cash in. The pain was sharp, a bitterness that made my chest ache, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't their victim, not anymore. I'd play their game better, and they'd never see it coming. That call was the first brick in my trap. I needed them to think I was on board to keep spending money on their so-called resort while I built my case. Evelyn had already texted me a plan she'd pose as a buyer to get Sophia talking, maybe catch her gloating about their scheme. But I needed more than words. I needed proof that it'd hold up. I called Tom, the private investigator, to check his progress. Got something preliminary on Marcus. He said, his voice all business. Looks like he was let go for more than bad deals. There's a paper trail suggesting he funneled client money into personal accounts. No charges yet, but the feds are sniffing around. I'll have details in a day. My pulse jumped. Embezzlement. That wasn't just shady, it was criminal. If Marcus thought my house money would bail him out, he was dead wrong. But what if the feds moved before I could? I needed to act fast. With that ticking in my head, I drove to meet James Whitaker, the real estate lawyer Evelyn swore by. His office was in a modest brick building on Kipling Avenue, the kind of place that screamed practical, not flashy, perfect for a guy like me. James was in his 50s, gray at the temples with a handshake that said he'd seen his share of family messes. "Mr. Thompson." he said, pouring coffee from a beat-up machine. Evelyn says you've got a situation. Lay it out. I told him everything, the overheard call, Marcus's debts, their plan to sell my house. His pen scratched notes as I talked, his face calm, but his eyes narrowing when I got to the nursing home bit. Unfortunately, Henry, this happens more than you'd think. Kids see a parent's assets and start counting dollars before they're even gone. I leaned forward, hands steady on my knees. They can't do anything legally, right? The house is mine. James nodded. Correct. You and Margaret owned it jointly, but after she passed, it's yours alone. They've got no claim unless you give it to them. Relief hit, but it was short-lived, replaced by a hard-edged focus. What if I sell it myself? Fast. James didn't blink. Denver's market is red hot, especially in Cherry Creek. With the right buyer, cash, no contingencies, you could close in a week. Why the rush? I met his eyes, my voice low but firm. Because they think I'm too old to fight back. I want to show them I'm not. That meeting was like laying a foundation, solid, deliberate. James promised to line up a cash buyer and draft the paperwork, no leaks to Sophia or Marcus. I left his office feeling lighter, like I'd just shored up a crumbling wall. But I wasn't done. Evelyn called that afternoon, her voice buzzing with purpose. I set it up, Henry. Told Sophia I know someone looking to buy in your neighborhood. She wants to meet tomorrow to talk options. I'll record it. Get her to spill. I could almost see her grin, the same one Margaret loved when Evelyn was scheming something clever. Sophia's greed was her weakness, and Evelyn was ready to exploit it, catching her gloating about the money they'd make off my life's work. Back home, I sat at the table, my notepad filling up lawyer-secured PI, digging Evelyn's sting in motion. My hands didn't shake anymore, not like they did after that phone call. The engineer in me was back, measuring every angle, planning every move. Sophia and Marcus thought they were pulling the strings, but I was weaving a net they'd never escape. Every step I took, every call, every meeting was a brick in the wall of their downfall. But what would Evelyn get out of Sophia tomorrow? And what exactly was Tom about to uncover? Whatever it was, it'd be the key to locking this plan tight and making sure they paid for every lie. The morning after meeting James Whitaker, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the granite countertop I'd installed for Margaret, its gold veins catching the early light. I always thought a house was more than bricks and mortar. It was the life you poured into it. The dreams you built, board by board. But what I didn't expect was how fast I'd have to let it go to keep it out of Sophia and Marcus's hands. Their plan to sell my home, to shove me into some nursing home for their bolder fantasy, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a theft of everything Margaret and I had worked for. But with Evelyn's sting set and Tom's investigation digging into Marcus's dirty past, I was ready to move. Fast. I met Alex Reynolds, the real estate agent James recommended, at a diner off Cherry Creek. He was a sharp guy, early 40s, with the kind of confident nod that said he knew Denver's market like the back of his hand. Henry, he said, flipping open his tablet. Your place is a gem, 400 square feet custom work prime location. Market's hotter than a July sidewalk right now. I've got cash buyers lined up who'd jump at it. I told him I needed it sold in a week, no questions, no trace back to me until it was done. He didn't blink. Cash deal, no contingencies, $890,000, maybe more. I can have contracts ready tomorrow. I nodded, my chest tight but steady. This was it, the moment I'd turn their greed against them. But walking away from the diner, I felt a pang, sharp and heavy, like leaving a piece of my soul behind. Back home, I stood by Margaret's bay window, the one I'd built for her to read in sunlight streaming through like it was mocking me with memories. 25 years of sweat, laying floors, framing walls, saving for Sophia's future flashed before me. I could still see her toddling across the kitchen, Margaret's arms outstretched, both of us crying with joy at her first steps. Letting it go hurt like hell, a bitterness that made my eyes sting. Part of me wanted to cling to this place, to the life we'd made here. But another part, the part that remembered Sophia's laugh, Marcus's smug chuckle, knew I had to let go to live. This wasn't giving up. It was taking control, protecting what was mine before they could steal it. That pain fueled my focus. I wasn't just selling a house, I was building a trap. Tom, the PI, called that afternoon, his voice low and clipped. Marcus's deeper in the hole than I thought he said. Paper trail shows he siphoned off client funds hundreds of thousands before his firm cut him loose. Feds are watching him, but no arrest yet. You want me to tip them off anonymously? My heart raced. Embezzlement wasn't just a rumor, it was real, and Marcus was desperate enough to think my house money would save him. I told Tom to hold off but keep digging. If I timed it right, the feds could be part of their reckoning. But what if they moved too soon? I needed this sale locked down first. With the deal in motion, I got to work securing the house. I called a 24-hour locksmith, a guy named Eddie, who didn't ask questions when I paid cash. He swapped out the brass locks Margaret loved for sleek silver ones, the new keys feeling foreign in my hand. Quality work on these originals, Eddie said, eyeing the doorframe I'd built. You did this yourself. I nodded, a flicker of pride mixing with the ache. Next, I installed a mini camera disguised as a phone charger by the front door. I tested it on my phone, the app showing a crystal clear view of the entryway. Every move Sophia and Marcus made when they got back would be caught, their shock and panic preserved for me to see. The engineer in me double-checked the angles, the battery, the Wi-Fi, like setting up a job site for a perfect pour. The final piece was the letter. I sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote in my careful script, the kind Margaret always said was steady as your heart. Dear Sophia and Marcus, it began. You thought I was a burden too old to see your plan. I heard you every word. The house is sold $890,000 safe where you can't touch it. Your things are in storage. You've got 30 days before fees kick in. I gave you my life for 42 years. You repaid me with betrayal. Learn from this. I folded it, my hands calm but my chest heavy, imagining their faces, Sophia's fake tears. Marcus's smugness crumbling felt like a quiet victory, a justice I'd earned. Their motive was clear greed, wrapped in entitlement, thinking they could discard me like an old blueprint. But I'd flipped the script. Evelyn called later, her voice crackling with excitement. Sophia met me today, Henry. Couldn't stop talking about how much they'd make off your house. $1 million easy, she said. I got it all recorded. She didn't even blink when I asked about you, just said you'd be better off in a home. I clenched the phone, the sting of Sophia's coldness hitting fresh. She wasn't just complicit. She was proud, gloating over my life's work like it was her jackpot. Marcus's influence had turned her into someone I didn't recognize, or maybe I'd just been blind too long. My notepad was full now. Sale in progress, locks changed, camera set, letter ready, Evelyn's recording secured. Each step was a nail in their plan, a piece of my fight to take back what was mine. I wasn't yelling or raging, that wasn't me, but every move was deliberate, calculated, like reinforcing a structure to withstand a storm. Sophia and Marcus thought they'd outsmarted me, but they'd underestimated the man who'd built their world. The question now was, would Tom's next call confirm the feds were closing in? And could I pull this off before they got wind of my plan? I was about to find out, and when I did, their house of lies would collapse. The house felt emptier than ever that final day, like it knew I was saying goodbye. I moved slow through the rooms, suitcase open on the living room floor, deciding what came with me and what stayed behind. Margaret's diary went in first, its pages full of the truths I'd overlooked too long. Her wedding photo followed that smile of hers, a reminder of better days. A stack of papers, the deed, my old engineering licenses, wrapped up the essentials, the bare bones of a man starting fresh. The rest. The armchair where Sophia used to read her school books, the dining table with its nicks from family meals. I left it all. It wasn't easy. A deep bitterness settled in my chest like pulling roots from soil that had held them for decades. But this wasn't surrender. It was me taking the reins, cutting loose before Sophia and Marcus could strip it bare. I paused in the kitchen, hand on the counter I'd installed for Margaret, remembering her picking the pattern because it caught the light like gold. 25 years of memories hit me. Nights measuring twice to get it perfect weekends, sanding while Sophia toddled around asking Daddy why so hard. We'd scraped by on beans and rice to afford it, but it was ours, a testament to love and grit. Now, with the sale papers signed and the cash wired, it belonged to strangers. The ache was real, not a storm, but a steady rain wearing away at me. At 70, walking away felt like admitting the years had won, but I knew better. This was strength, not weakness, choosing freedom over holding on to a house tainted by their greed. Locking the door one final time, the new keys cold and unfamiliar, I loaded the car and drove to the Highlands apartment. It was modest, clean lines and neutral walls with none of the warmth Margaret had brought to our old place. Unpacking took longer than it should, my back twinged, lifting boxes, knees, protesting the stairs, a nagging reminder that age doesn't make changes easy. That night, I fumbled with the unfamiliar light switches, the harsh bulbs casting unfamiliar shadows that made the walls feel like strangers. I lay on the stiff bed staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing in heavy. Loneliness wrapped around me like a cold blanket. Memories flooding back, Margaret's laugh echoing in our kitchen. Sophia's first words at the table. Starting over at my age felt daunting, like piecing together a puzzle with missing edges. Part of me wanted to turn back, cling to the familiar, but the stronger part, the one Margaret had always seen in me, whispered, "You've built before Henry. Do it again." I clenched my fists under the sheets, breathing deep, turning that ache into fuel. This wasn't the end. It was me rising, not fading. What I didn't expect was the buzz of my phone cutting through the quiet just past midnight. An unknown number. "We know you're up to something, old man. Stop now or you'll regret it." My heart skipped the words glaring on the screen, cold and menacing. Marcus had to be him, his desperation leaking through like a crack in his facade. Or was it Sophia masking her entitlement behind threats? The vagueness made it worse, stirring a mix of anger and unease. Their motive wasn't just greed anymore. It was fear, the kind that lashes out when the net tightens. I stared at the message, my pulse steadying as resolve kicked in. This wasn't a setback. It was proof they were rattled, sensing the ground shifting under them. But doubt crept in had Evelyn's meeting tipped them off, or Tom's digging. I didn't reply, just saved the text. It was evidence now, another nail in their coffin. Morning came gray, but I was up early heading to Colorado Community Bank to secure the sale money. David the banker met me with a firm handshake. "Morning, Mr. Thompson," he said, leading me to his office. "Big transfer, $890,000. New chapter." I nodded, keeping it simple. You could say that. We set up the fresh account, no ties to the old one, the funds wired safe and sound. Every keystroke felt like bolting a door they couldn't pick. This wasn't just hiding cash. It was me drawing a line, ensuring their greedy hands stayed empty. Back at the apartment, I called Tom the PI to tie off another loose end. "Send that anonymous tip to the feds now," I said, my tone even but unyielding. "Marcus's embezzlement, make sure they have the details." Tom grunted approval. "It's done. They're already on him. This'll speed things up." I hung up, a quiet satisfaction warming me. Marcus thought my money would bail him from his crimes, but I'd just handed the rope for his hanging. Their coldness, Sophia's blind loyalty to his schemes, Marcus's desperate threats, had sealed their fate. With the bank handled, I pulled up the camera app on my phone. The feed showed the old front door still and silent, but primed like a loaded spring. I tested it once more, zooming in, picturing their arrival. Sophia jiggling her key, confusion turning to panic. Marcus would bark orders, his control cracking as he read my letter. I could almost taste their shock, the way their world would shatter. It wasn't vengeance yelling in me. It was justice, quiet and deliberate, deep, like a plan I'd drafted 100 times. They'd counted on my age, my trust to make me easy prey. But I'd turned it around, and now they'd walk into the trap I'd laid. The only question left was what that text really meant. Was it Marcus's empty threat, or a sign he'd caught wind? Either way, I was steps ahead, and their reckoning was closing in. Tomorrow, the waiting would end. The wait was the hardest part those couple of days in the new apartment, blending into one long stretch of watching the clock. I always thought revenge was something hot and fast, like a spark igniting dry wood. But what I didn't expect was how it simmered quiet and patient building pressure until the moment hit. With the house sold, the money tucked safe, and that chilling text from Marcus, or whoever still on my phone, I spent my time double-checking the camera feed. The app showed the front door clear as day, silent for now, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way. Sophia and Marcus were due back from Phoenix any minute, expecting their pushover dad ready to roll over. Instead, they'd hit a wall I'd built solid, unyielding, just like the ones I'd engineered for decades. I sat in the apartment's plain armchair, coffee in hand, staring at my phone like it was a window to their downfall. The place still felt off, too new, too empty, but I was settling in one small step at a time. Evelyn had texted earlier. Any word, stay strong. Tom, the PI, confirmed the feds had my tip on Marcus's embezzlement. They were moving slow, but sure. That text from last night. We know you're up to something, hung over me like a shadow. But I didn't bite. It was Marcus's fear talking his cold schemes, cracking under pressure. Their motive wasn't just greed anymore. It was survival, desperate and ugly, pushing them to threats they couldn't back up. I sipped my coffee, calm on the outside, but inside a mix of old anticipation and bitterness stirred. This was justice, not vengeance, and I'd wait as long as it took. The app buzzed around noon, motion detected. My heart jumped a quick thump like an engine kicking over after sitting idle too long. There they were, Sophia's SUV pulling into the driveway right on schedule. She stepped out first, stretching like the drive was just another inconvenience, her face all casual confidence. Marcus followed, lugging their bags with that swagger of his like he owned the world. They headed to the door, Sophia digging for her keys, chatting about something trivial, probably their next big splurge on my dime. She slid the key in, turned. Nothing. Her brow creased, and she tried again, jiggling harder. What the heck, she muttered, the mic picking it up clear. Marcus dropped the bags, his cool slipping. Give it here. Same result, no give, no entry. My pulse raced, not from fear, but a quiet thrill, the first crack in their perfect plan. They circled to the back, out of view for a bit, but I'd changed those locks too. When they came around, front frustration etched deep. Sophia pounding the door, calling Dad. Open up. No answer. Of course. Marcus eyed the windows, spotting the one I'd left unlatched on purpose, a small mercy or maybe a tease. He hoisted her up her skirt, snagging as she clambered in like a thief in her own home. Minutes later, the front door swung open from inside and they hauled their stuff through. But they froze dead when Sophia spotted the envelope taped right at eye level, their names in my handwriting, neat and final. She ripped it down, hands trembling as she tore it open. Marcus crowded in his face, tightening. I leaned closer to my screen, heart thumping steady now, like a drumbeat I controlled. Sophia read aloud, her voice cracking halfway. Dear Sophia and Marcus, you thought I was a burden too old to see your plan. I heard you every word. The house is sold $890,000 safe where you can't touch it. Your things are in storage. You've got 30 days before fees kick in. I gave you my life for 42 years. You repaid me with betrayal. Learn from this. The paper slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the floor. He sold it, she whispered, her face draining of color. Marcus snatched it up, rereading like he could argue with the words. That crafty old bastard. How the hell did he pull this off? A wave of satisfaction washed over me, warm and deep, but not without a fleeting pity. Sophia looked smaller somehow, her entitlement stripped bare, facing the mess she'd made. Marcus paced his control fraying, cursing under his breath. Their coldness had always been there. Sophia's resentment simmering since she was a kid, turning her hugs into demands. Marcus's schemes hiding behind that salesman grin, using people like stepping stones. But seeing it play out, their world cracking, I felt a pang for what could have been. Still, it faded quick. They'd chosen this, their greed blinding them to the father who'd given everything. No, this was justice, quiet and earned. I'd called it right every beat. Sophia slumped against the wall, fumbling with her phone to call me straight to voicemail since I'd blocked them. Marcus kicked a bag, his desperation showing. "We'll find him, Soph. Get that money back." But she just stared at the letter, tears starting. Then she spotted Margaret's diary on the side table. I'd left it there, deliberate, a final twist. She picked it up, flipping through, her eyes widening. "Mom." She knew about me taking money from Dad's wallet as a kid. Said I was resentful, selfish. Her voice broke a mix of shock and something like regret washing over her face. Or was it just fear, realizing Mom had seen through her all along? Marcus dismissed it. "Forget that crap. We need a lawyer." But Sophia clutched the diary, sobbing now, the weight of her choices hitting home, or what was left of it. Watching her crumble, I felt that brief pity again, a tug for the daughter I'd raised. Maybe there was a sliver of remorse in her tears, a glimpse of the girl who'd once looked up to me. But Marcus's reaction, pacing, barking orders, killed it quick. His motive wasn't love or family, it was survival. Cold and calculated, dragging Sophia down to save his own skin from those embezzlement shadows. I'd predicted this dance, the denial, the blame, the slow unraveling. My engineer's mind had mapped it, every reaction, like testing a load on a faulty beam. They thought I was weak, but I'd outthought them at every turn. The satisfaction lingered sweet and steady as they realized the house and their future was gone. No keys, no claim, no windfall to bail Marcus from his mess. Their downfall wasn't loud. It was this moment crumbling in real time. I leaned back, heart easing to a calm beat, knowing I'd risen above it all. But as Sophia wiped her tears, still holding that diary, a question nagged. Was her regret real, or just another act? And what would happen when the blame turned to each other? The camera kept rolling, and their show was far from over. The apartment was still, just the hum of the fridge breaking the silence as I sat with my phone, the camera feed glowing like a window to the past I'd just shattered. I always thought justice would feel loud, like a hammer striking steel, but what I didn't expect was how it unfolded, quiet, relentless, like a river carving stone. Sophia and Marcus were in the house now, their world unraveling on my screen, my letter in their hands exposing their betrayal. The $890 to $1,000 was safe. The locks changed, and Tom's tip to the feds about Marcus's embezzlement was circling like a hawk. That text from last night. "We know you're up to something," still nagged at me, but it wasn't fear driving me anymore. It was something deeper, profound, a calm certainty that I'd outplayed them. They'd counted on my age, my trust to make me their mark. Today, they'd learn how wrong they were. The camera feed showed them in the living room, Sophia slumped against the wall, my letter crumpled in her fist. Marcus paced like a caged animal, his face a mix of fury and panic. "He can't do this," he snapped, voice sharp through the mic. "It's our house, Soph. We had plans." Sophia shook her head, tears streaking her mascara, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was never ours, Marcus. He heard us. He knew." Her words carried a weight I hadn't expected, a crack in her entitlement that sounded almost like regret. But then she flipped open Margaret's diary, left there on purpose, and her face froze as she read aloud. "Sophia doesn't see Henry's sacrifices. She took money from his wallet at 15, lied without blinking. I fear she'll never value him." She stopped, choking on a sob. Mom knew I didn't appreciate Dad. She saw it all along. The words hit me, a fleeting pang of pity for the daughter I'd raised, now facing the mirror I'd left for her. But Marcus wasn't having it. "Forget that old journal," he barked, snatching it from her. "We need to fix this. Find him, get that money." His desperation was raw now, the cool salesman mask gone, revealing the schemer I'd suspected since Evelyn's tip. "You're the one who pushed for this." Sophia shot back, her voice rising. "You said he was a burden, that the house would set us up." Marcus spun on, her eyes blazing. "And you went along with it, didn't you? Don't pin this on me when you were dreaming of that bolder view." The room crackled with their blame, each word peeling back their motive greed. Yes, but also a shared delusion that my life was theirs to cash in. Sophia's resentment had fueled her betrayal, but Marcus's crimes, those client funds he'd siphoned, drove the plan, his desperation to dodge the feds pulling her strings. Watching them tear into each other, I felt a surge of satisfaction, steady and warm like a fire finally catching. My heart beat, even not racing anymore, but strong, like it knew the plan was working. I'd called their moves Sophia's tears, Marcus's rage like an engineer mapping stress points on a faulty frame. But that pity lingered, a quiet tug for Sophia, my little girl once now lost to her own choices. Part of me wanted to believe her tears held remorse, that Margaret's words had cracked something open. But the larger part, the one that remembered her laugh on that call, knew better. Her regret, if it was real, came too late. Their coldness had built this moment, and I'd engineered their fall. What I didn't expect was how fast it escalated. The camera caught a new sound, tires crunching on gravel outside. Two men in dark jackets stepped out of an unmarked car, badges glinting as they approached the door. My breath caught a jolt of anticipation. The feds. Tom's tip had worked faster than I'd hoped. Marcus froze mid-pace, his face paling as the doorbell rang. Sophia looked up confused. "Who's that?" she muttered, wiping her eyes. Marcus didn't answer, just strode to the door, his bravado crumbling with every step. "Mr. Reed," one agent said, voice calm but firm. "We need to talk about some financial irregularities from your time at Pinnacle Advisors. Mind stepping outside?" Marcus's jaw tightened, his eyes darting like a trapped animal's. "This is a mistake," he stammered, but his voice betrayed him, shaking with the fear of a man who knew the game was up. Sophia stood clutching the diary, her face a mix of shock and dawning horror. "What's going on, Marcus?" she demanded, but he ignored her, following the agents out. The camera caught her sinking back to the floor alone, now the diary open in her lap. She flipped to another page, her voice trembling as she read Henry's "Too generous." Sophia doesn't see his heart, only what she can take. Her sobs grew louder, raw, and broken, as if Margaret's words were a judgment she couldn't escape. For a moment, I wondered if she was truly seeing herself or just mourning the money she'd lost. Her motive had always been entitlement, a belief she deserved everything without earning it. But now, with Marcus facing the law and the house gone, that illusion was dust. My phone buzzed, pulling me from the screen. Sophia's number. I stared at it, my thumb hovering, a flicker of that old fatherly instinct urging me to answer. "Dad." Her voicemail came through, voice shaky. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Marcus, he pushed me, but I should have stopped it. Please call me." The words sounded sincere, but I'd heard her play that card before, sweet, when it suited her, cold when it didn't. Was she sorry or just scared now that Marcus's schemes were unraveling? The tug of war. Part of me wanted to believe her to save the daughter I'd loved. But the truth laid bare by Margaret's diary, and their own words held me firm. I blocked her number, my hand steady, no hesitation. This wasn't about punishment, it was about protecting what was left of me. The camera feed showed the agents leading Marcus to their car. His shoulders slumped, no trace of the cocky grin he'd worn at my barbecues. Sophia sat alone, the diary clutched to her chest, her world collapsing in the house that wasn't hers anymore. Their downfall was complete. No money, no home, and now the law closing in. I'd built this moment step by step, like a structure designed to withstand their greed. The satisfaction wasn't loud or wild. It was quiet, profound, like a job well done after years of labor. I'd given them everything, college, a wedding, my trust, and they'd thrown it back with betrayal. Now they'd face the cost, not just of losing the house, but of losing the man who'd held it together. Leaning back in the armchair, I let out a slow breath, the weight of it all settling. I'd always thought family was worth any sacrifice, but what I didn't expect was how freedom felt clean, solid, like a fresh blueprint. Sophia's tears, Marcus's panic, the feds at the door. It was justice, not revenge, and I'd earned it. But as I watched her cry, a question lingered. Was her apology real, or just another act to claw back what she'd lost? And what would they do when they realized the game was truly over? The camera kept rolling, but the next move wasn't mine. It was theirs, and I'd be watching. The camera feed went dark on my phone, but the image of Sophia clutching Margaret's diary, tears streaking her face, stayed burned in my mind. I always thought justice would feel lighter, like a load lifted after a long day's work. But what I didn't expect was the weight that lingered, a mix of satisfaction and something heavier, a chua shot for the family I'd lost, not just to betrayal but to choices I couldn't undo. Marcus was gone with the feds, his embezzlement catching up, and Sophia was left in a house that wasn't hers anymore. I'd outsmarted them with locks, a letter, and $890,000 safe in my new account. But sitting in this bare Highlands apartment, the silence felt like a reminder winning didn't bring back what was gone. Still, I wasn't done building my life, my terms, my way. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No stamp, just my name in Sophia's hurried scrawl. My heart gave a quick thump, not from fear, but from a flicker of that old fatherly pull. I opened it slow, bracing myself. Her words spilled out messy and raw. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Marcus pushed me, said the house was our only way out. I was wrong, so wrong. But there's something I never told you. I have a daughter, your granddaughter, Lily. She's 2. I kept her secret because I was scared you'd see through me like Mom did. Please let me fix this. A photo slipped out, a little girl with Margaret's wide eyes and curly hair smiling at a park. My breath caught a sharp ache, hitting like a hammer to the chest. A granddaughter. Hidden from me all this time, I sank into the armchair, the photo trembling in my hand. I pictured Lily, those eyes so like Margaret's, and my heart twisted, part joy, part pain, like finding a piece of home you thought was lost. I'd given Sophia everything, college, a wedding, my trust, thinking it was for our family's future. But she'd kept this from me, scared I'd see her for what she was, a daughter who'd chosen greed over love, just as Margaret feared. The tear ripped through me. Part of me wanted to scoop that little girl up, hold her like I'd held Sophia once. But another part, the one hardened by her betrayal, knew I couldn't trust her tears. Sophia's motive wasn't remorse. It was survival, a last-ditch grab to pull me back after Marcus's schemes collapsed. Her note sounded desperate, not sorry, and that coldness, the same coldness I'd heard in her laugh, kept me steady. What I didn't expect was the second buzz on my phone, another text from that unknown number. "You think you've won. Watch your back." Marcus again, or someone he'd roped in. The threat was sharper now, no longer vague, and it sent a chill through me. Was he out dodging the feds already, or just lashing out from a cell? The uncertainty gnawed, but I didn't flinch. I'd built my life on solving problems, and this was just another one I'd handle with the same precision that got me this far. Their desperation was showing, and it only made my resolve stronger. They'd lost the house, the money, and now their grip on me. But a granddaughter. That changed the game in ways I hadn't planned. I drove to the bank that afternoon, Margaret's photo in my pocket like a talisman. David the banker greeted me with a nod. "Back so soon?" "Mr. Thompson," he asked, his tone light, but curious. I didn't smile, just laid it out. "I need to set up a trust fund for a kid, my granddaughter." His eyebrows rose, but he got to work drafting papers for a trust to hold part of the $890,000 for Lily. I saw her face in my mind, those curls bouncing, and it hurt, a good hurt, like seeing light after a long night. I wasn't giving Sophia a dime. She'd burned that bridge. But Lily. She was a clean slate, a chance to pass on what Margaret and I had built without the taint of betrayal. The trust was my way of keeping faith with family, not the one that had stabbed me, but the one that might still grow. Back at the apartment, my phone buzzed again, Sophia calling this time. I stared at the screen, her name glowing like a test I wasn't sure I'd pass. The old me would have answered, hoping for the daughter I'd lost. But the new me, the one who'd sold the house, outsmarted their plan, saw through her. I let it ring, then blocked her number for good, my hand steady as stone. Her apology, if it was real, came too late. Her tears were for the life she'd gambled away, not for me. Marcus's threat, her hidden child. They were just more layers of manipulation trying to claw back what I'd taken. I wasn't falling for it. Not again. My heart ached for Lily, but I'd protect her future, my way, not theirs. Evelyn called later, her voice warm but urgent. Heard from a friend Marcus is out on bail, but the feds are building a case. You okay? I leaned back, a faint smile tugging at me. Better than okay, I said. Got something for my granddaughter, and they've got nothing. Evelyn chuckled, the sound like a nod to Margaret's spirit. I'd risen above their schemes not with rage, but with the quiet strength of a man who'd built a life twice. Sophia and Marcus had bet on my weakness, counting on age to make me soft. But I'd turned their greed into their undoing, and now I was free to start over, to plan a trip somewhere warm, maybe Arizona, where the sun wouldn't remind me of home. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was deep thumb-so, like a foundation laid right. I'd given them 42 years, and they'd thrown it away for a quick buck. Now they had nothing, no house, no money, no father to lean on. Lily, though she was my new blueprint, a chance to build something good. But that text from Marcus, sharp and threatening, stuck with me. Was it a last gasp, or did he have one more card to play, and would Sophia's tears ever turn into something real? I didn't know, but I was ready for whatever came next, my eyes on the horizon, not the wreckage behind. The Highlands apartment was starting to feel less like a motel and more like a blank slate, a place I could build something new. I sat at the small dining table, a glass of Margaret's favorite Bordeaux in hand, the deep red catching the late afternoon light. I always thought freedom would come with a bang, like breaking through a wall after years of work. But what I didn't expect was how it settled in quiet, like the calm after a storm you'd braced for. Sophia's tears, Marcus's arrest, the house gone, and little Lily's photo still tucked in my wallet. They were all behind me now. The $890,000 was safe. My trap had sprung, and their world had crumbled. But sitting here, raising a glass to Margaret, I felt something deeper than victory, a steady peace, hard-earned and mine alone. I sipped the wine, its warmth spreading, and whispered, "To you, Margaret. We did it." Her photo sat on the table, those wide eyes watching me like they always had, steady through every job site and late-night worry. The chuasot was still there, a faint ache for the family I'd thought we had, Sophia's laughter as a kid, the way she'd cling to me during thunderstorms. But that girl was gone, replaced by someone who'd chosen greed over love, her resentment fueled by Marcus's schemes. Their motive was clear as day, now entitlement and desperation, a toxic mix that blinded them to the father who'd given everything. The house, the money, my trust, they'd tried to take it all and I'd taken it back. Not with shouting or rage, but with the thumb-so precision of a man who'd built his life brick by brick. That lingering text from Marcus. "You think you've won." "Watch your back" still sat in my phone, a dark little shadow. Was it a bluff sent before the feds hauled him off? Or something more? A hint? He'd try to claw his way back. It didn't scare me, not anymore. I'd faced worse than his empty threats, years of scraping by, losing Margaret, and now this betrayal. But it kept me sharp, a reminder that their kind of greed doesn't quit easy. I didn't reply, just saved it, another piece of evidence if I needed it. The question of what Marcus might do next hung there unanswered, but it didn't shake me. I'd outsmarted them once. I could do it again. For now, their downfall was enough. Sophia alone, Marcus in cuffs, their dreams of a bolder mansion turned to dust. The loneliness I'd felt that first night in this place was fading, replaced by something new, hope maybe, or just the sense that I wasn't done yet. I'd spent my life fixing what others broke, and now I was building again. Not a house this time, but a life, one where I called the shots. I'd signed up for a painting class at the community center down the road, a whim that felt right. The first day I held a brush like it was a foreign tool, my hands clumsy compared to the days I wielded a hammer. But as I dabbed blue onto the canvas trying to sketch a mountain like the ones Margaret loved, I felt her smile like she was right there cheering me on. At 70, learning something new was a small rebellion against age, a way to prove I wasn't the burden they'd called me. It was a step shaky but real toward a future I hadn't planned but was ready to shape. Evelyn stopped by that afternoon, her eyes bright with the kind of mischief Margaret used to love. Heard the latest, she said, settling across from me with a coffee. Sophia filed for divorce. Marcus's bail didn't last. Feds are digging deeper and she's done covering for him. I leaned back, the news settling like a final nail in their coffin. Divorce. It wasn't a surprise, not after watching them tear into each other on that camera feed. Sophia's entitlement had crashed against Marcus's lies, and their house of cards was gone. Their coldness, her willingness to sell me out, his scheming to dodge his crimes, had cost them everything. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was steady, a quiet justice that felt right, like a structure finally passing inspection. They'd pay for their betrayal long after the house was gone, their lives unraveling while I built mine back up. But that bitterness still lingers, not for Sophia or Marcus, but for what might have been. I pulled Lily's photo from my wallet, her curls and wide eyes so like Margaret's. That trust fund I'd set up was my promise to her, a clean start, free from her parents' mistakes. I'd given Sophia 42 years, poured my heart into her future, only to watch her throw it away. But Lily. She was a chance to do it right, to pass on the love Margaret and I had built without the baggage of betrayal. The Jiang Se was there, part of me ached to see that little girl, to tell her stories of her grandma. But Sophia's apology, her tears, felt like a trap, another play to pull me back. I'd made my choice, no contact, no second chances for those who'd burned me. Lily's future was secure, and that was enough. I stood at the apartment window, the Denver skyline stretching out gold and pink in the sunset. I'd always thought family was the endgame, the reason for every late night and calloused hand. But what I didn't expect was how freedom could feel clean, solid, like a fresh blueprint unrolled on a table. I wasn't the broken old man they'd counted on, but a builder starting over with Evelyn's friendship, a new community, and a trip planned to Arizona, where the sun might warm these old bones. The hurt was still there, a quiet echo of Sophia's voice, Marcus's threats, but it didn't own me. I'd risen from the ashes of their betrayal stronger than they'd ever know. Evelyn's voice broke my thoughts. "You're looking lighter, Henry," she said, sipping her coffee. "What's next?" I smiled, a real one, the kind I hadn't felt in years. Maybe some painting, maybe a road trip. "I'm not done yet." She nodded, her grin mirroring Margaret's old spark. But that text from Marcus still nagged a loose thread in my plan. Was it just his last gasp? Or did he have something left to throw? And Sophia, would she try again or let it go? I didn't know, but I was ready. My eyes on the road ahead, not the wreckage behind. I'd built a life once, and I'd do it again on my terms, with no one calling me a burden. The Denver skyline glowed gold and pink as I stood at my apartment window, the city stretching out like a promise I hadn't dared to believe in for years. I always thought the end of a fight would feel like a finish line, all cheers and relief. But what I didn't expect was how it felt more like a quiet exhale, a weight lifting not with a bang, but with a steady calm that settled deep in my bones. The house was gone, sold for $890,000 safe from Sophia and Marcus's grasping hands. Their world had crumbled, Marcus in cuffs, Sophia alone with her regrets, and little Lily's photo now a new spark in my heart. I'd outsmarted their betrayal, turned their greed against them with locks, a letter, and a camera that caught their fall. But standing here sipping the last of Margaret's Bordeaux, I wasn't just a winner. I was free to build again on my terms with no one calling me a burden. I raised my glass to Margaret's photo, her eyes steady as ever on the table beside me. "We made it, honey," I whispered, the wine's warmth carrying a bittersweet edge. The bitterness remains a faint ache for the family. I'd thought we had Sophia's giggles as a kid, her tiny hand in mine during summer walks. I'd poured 42 years into her, from college tuition to her dream wedding, thinking it was for our future. But she'd chosen Marcus's schemes, her resentment twisting love into entitlement. Their motive was clear now, greed, pure and cold, with Marcus dodging his embezzlement mess and Sophia blind to the father she'd traded for a paycheck. I didn't shout their injustice. It spilled out in the details, their smug laughs on that call, the diary's warnings, the way they'd planned to warehouse me. But I'd learned something stronger. Self-respect is the fire of old age, unquenchable, no matter how deep the betrayal cuts. That text from Marcus, "You think you've won? Watch your back," still sat unanswered in my phone, a loose thread I couldn't quite snip. Was it his final jab sent before the feds tightened the screws, or a sign he wasn't done plotting from wherever he'd landed? It didn't scare me, not after all this. I'd faced worse, losing Margaret, scraping by for Sophia only to have it thrown back. But it kept me sharp, a reminder that greed like theirs doesn't fade easy. I saved the message, just in case, but my focus was forward. Their downfall was complete. House gone, marriage in tatters. Marcus facing charges. Sophia's tears, her apology about Lily, might have tugged at me once, but I saw them for what they were too late, tinged with the same self-interest that drove her to betray me. I didn't need her regret to feel whole. The loneliness of those first nights here had softened, replaced by a quiet hope I hadn't felt in years. I'd started small, joining the community center down the road, signing up for a painting class on a whim. That first session, I held the brush like a rookie, my hands more used to hammers than art. But as I sketched a mountain jagged and blue like the ones Margaret loved, I felt a spark, like she was there nodding with that proud smile. "Not bad for an old builder," I muttered to myself, chuckling at the clumsy lines. At 70, trying something new wasn't just a hobby. It was defiance proof I wasn't the burden they'd called me. Each stroke was a step shaky, but mine toward a life I was shaping, not one dictated by their lies. Evelyn dropped by that morning, her coffee mug steaming as she settled across from me. "Words out," she said, her eyes glinting with that old mischief Margaret adored. "Sophia's divorce is final. Marcus is stuck in legal hell. Feds found more accounts he drained. They're done, Henry." I leaned back, the news landing like a final bolt in a finished frame. Their coldness, Sophia's entitlement, Marcus's calculated schemes had cost them everything. No house, no money, no marriage to prop up their illusions. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was deep, a quiet justice that felt right, like a building passing every code. They'd pay for their betrayal long after the dust settled, their lives unraveling while I found my footing. It wasn't gloating. It was balance, the kind you earn when you stand up for yourself. But the ache for what might have been lingered, not for them, but for Lily. I pulled her photo from my wallet, those curls and wide eyes so like Margaret's. The trust fund I'd set up was my promise to her, a clean start, free from her parents' mistakes. I'd given Sophia everything only to watch her sell me out. But Lily. She was a chance to do it right, to pass on the love Margaret and I had built, untainted by greed. The Jangse hit hard. Part of me ached to meet her, to tell her stories of her grandma's laugh, her strength. But Sophia's note, her voicemail, felt like traps, Her remorse, too, tied to loss to trust. I'd chosen my path, no contact, no second chances for those who'd burned me. Lily's future was secure, and that was my gift, not theirs. I stepped back to the window, the sunset painting Denver in colors that felt like a new beginning. I'd always thought family was the reason for every calloused hand every late night. But what I didn't expect was how freedom could feel solid, clean, like a fresh blueprint unrolled on a table. I wasn't the old man they'd counted on breaking. I was a builder starting over with Evelyn's friendship, a community that welcomed me, and a trip planned to Arizona where the sun might warm these tired bones. The hurt was still there, a quiet echo of Sophia's choices, Marcus's threats, but it didn't own me. I'd risen from their ashes stronger than they'd ever know. Evelyn's voice cut through my thoughts. "You're looking like a man with plans, Henry," she said, grinning over her mug. "What's next?" I smiled back, real and easy. A little painting, a little travel. Maybe I'll try the Grand Canyon, always wanted to see it. She nodded, her eyes mirroring Margaret's spark. But that text from Marcus nagged a shadow I couldn't quite shake. Was it his last gasp, or did he have one more play? And Sophia, would she reach out again or fade into her own wreckage? I didn't know, but I was ready. Life had taught me self-respect is a fire nobody can put out, not even your own blood. If they came for me, I'd meet them standing tall. So here's my question to you, whoever's listening. What would you do if the people you loved most turned their backs on you? Would you fight like I did to take back what's yours? Or would you let it go? Hoping time heals the hurt. I built a life once, and I'm building it again. No regrets, no looking back. Sophia and Marcus learned the hard way betrayal has a price, and I made sure they paid it. Now I'm living for me and for Lily with a future wide open. What's your story? As the Denver sunset faded, I stood at my window feeling the quiet strength of a life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. This journey wasn't just about a house or money. It was about learning that self-respect is a fire no one can extinguish, even when those closest to you turn away. I'd given everything to Sophia and Marcus only to find that family isn't always what you build. It's what you hold on to within yourself. For me, that's the promise of Lily, a new spark of hope, and the freedom to start again. The bitterness of loss lingers, but it's softened by the peace of knowing I stood tall, not for revenge, but for my own worth. What I've learned is simple, yet deep. No matter how deep the hurt, you can rise, rebuild, and find your own light. So what's your take on this story? Have you faced a moment where you had to choose between letting go or fighting for yourself? Share your thoughts or your own stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. If this tale moved, you give it a like to show your support and hit that subscribe button to catch more stories that stir the heart and mind. Here's to finding peace after the storm, and may you always carry your own fire no matter what comes.